All right, so for those watching from home, we're going to start the meeting. So actually, does somebody want to open in prayer? Does anybody want to volunteer for prayer? Okay, go ahead, David.
Father God, we praise you for this evening. Thank you that we could all gather here in your name to be blessed. Hopefully we can be a blessing unto others through the knowledge we gain. Thank you for Tony and his home. Continue to bless them, encourage them, lift them up. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Wonderful. I will thank you guys for coming, and so as well as those watching. First off, the most important thing is I want to thank you guys for serving the kiddos of the church. It's really, a blessing. Actually, the vast majority of those who are serving aren't going to be having kids in it, which to me is a statement of love. I think that's really cool. So praise the Lord. So for you guys' love for the kiddos and desire to see them discipled in that. So I think this has been this is really good. I know it's weird meeting when it's already started, but it is what it is. So actually, a lot of that it was I'd ordered the curriculum, and it came quicker, and then the Sunday school had run out of curriculum, and so it's like, well, it corresponds to Sunday school, and so it's gonna, let's just go ahead and dive in, so if that makes sense. So speaking of curriculum, what we're doing during Kingdom Cadets, which we'll talk about the title towards the end, but it's called the Gospel Project. I had emailed you all, but it's kind of it goes along with the Sunday school lessons, and it's kind of like a writer basically. So it's going to teach the same Bible story, but it's going to teach different aspects of it and kind of reinforce. I mean, some of the kids it will be reinforcing. Some of the kids don't go to Sunday school and go to it in the service, or some people that do go to Sunday school might run late or whatever and miss during the service, if that makes sense. So it's Gospel Project. It's a huge popular curriculum. It's used probably. I think Gospel Project is the most popular kids curriculum historically. It's massive, but it's really good. And that's a good thing. Usually popular things are bad in Christian circles, but it's a rarity that it's And so I printed out an example, actually this week's lesson for the Gospel Project, and it's targeted at preschool, but it goes up to kindergarten, so it's a good way to kind of hit in the middle. And the majority of those that are in the class are kind of between the 3 to 5 range. Theoretically, you could have infants, but there's not. We'd have to have infants. I'd love to have infants for that to be a relevant concern, but there's just not at it yet. So you guys can pass that around and take a look at it. If you guys would like to while we're teaching. I should have printed multiple, but hindsight's 20/20. And for those watching at home, I will email you guys an example copy. So I'm not supposed to email everyone the whole curriculum because copyright stuff, but because
Okay, I have a question, because you said it's 3 to 5-year-olds. Now, is there still nursery?
So right now there's not adequate, not enough people volunteered, and 2, there's again just not realistically any, even on our first Sunday that we had some more people come back, but the youngest was 3, I think. So it wasn't even just by telling you can't come in there, it's just that there's not the kids, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
And we'll talk about that later, because I would love to see us grow, and I hope that, I don't believe if you build it, they'll come, and I think that those who don't come to church because there's not that options, that's a motivation concern that we need to address. But realistically, there are people that do come when this kind of stuff happens, and I think we can have some options to make us flexible when it does. With that, actually, we'll kind of address one of the things. There might be weeks that there's one, probably not, but there could be weeks theoretically there was even one kid. No matter how many kids there are, unless there's 0 kids, we're going to require 2 adults every week. And so, and that's being above bar. Actually, our child protection policy highly recommends it, which that's something maybe we'll talk about whether we'll look into changing. It's just, to me, as somebody who's done children's ministry for 8 years, it's in full-time 8 years, there's almost nothing that's more important in terms of safety of kids than having a 2-adult rule. Do you guys understand that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, and it protects you guys as well. So, but, and married couples are a lot, somebody had told me married couples can't serve together, but they can. There's nothing against in our bylaws. So you guys are above board in that sense. So, but that being said, if there are no, if a week comes and no kids, I mean, we dismiss. And to explain how it's dismissed, I'm dismissed right in the before my sermon, and they can kind of go out with you. If there's no kids, if you're in the back waiting for kids and nobody comes, sit and enjoy the sermon. So if that makes sense.
Is that what you do? Is you wait in the back for kids?
Yeah, I'll just dismiss them, and so so you just kind of stand in the back, and I'll announce Kingdom Cadets and for the kids to kind of come on with you, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's better than we used to have.
What did you used to do?
Nobody would say anything about junior church. It was
Okay.
in the bulletin, and
Yeah.
it was just if you were regular, it's no
Yeah.
problem. But if you were a guest, I mean, unless we picked them out.
That was the story with the flag. So at
Yeah.
one of our old churches, someone that I used to teach Sunday school with made that flag.
Mhm.
And so whoever was doing it for the week stood in the back, and then one of the kids would get to be whoever the line leader was, got to carry the flag down to the classroom.
Ah,
So.
that's
So we could do that. I mean, again, we're trying to do what we can for now, and so I can get something, and I can have that set up in the classroom. And the classroom, as I had mentioned in the email, is a classroom for now. It's a classroom opposite the bathrooms downstairs, if that makes sense. And so parents will know that. They just come down to you to pick up. So the first Sundays, the only difference will be first Sundays. Right now, and we'll see what we do in the future with Lord's Supper, but right now, first Sunday's Lord's Supper. The Turkingtons, there's the one scheduled on that. But theoretically, if you guys trade a Sunday, what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to have the parents know that when the Lord's Supper is, and tell them when we're reaching to the end of my sermon. I mean, you guys have anybody can tell where I'm getting close to the end because of my thing, and then to head down and grab the kids so that you guys can come up for, again, that's only the Turkingtons for now, but you never know who will switch, if the Turkingtons are, and Turks and Caicos, it's probably appropriate for them to go to that island. That's not island.
Okay.
It's not.
yeah, I
It's like a really rich
I got it. Yeah.
Anyway, so cool. So if you look at the curriculum, there's a lot in that curriculum.
Yeah.
And I do want to say with it that, even for those watching, that there's no expectation that you do everything with that. I am one that I'd rather give too much, and you choose that to do what you can than too little. So feel free to do what is essentials and to talk about what is kind of the most essentials in it. I want to make sure that they get some form of the Bible lesson. There's a video. There's both a DVD as well as a USB stick that we can play the video on, which I'll show you guys at the end. Those who are watching will need to get with me, and I'll explain the video process. But you can do the lesson by the video. I would like, second most important is there's a missions video, and I'd like them to see the missions video. And then third most important would be the verse, which there's a video for the verse. So literally, if you're exhausted and you're like, oh no, these kids are, if you put 3 videos on, it's not the end of the world. There are also crafts and stuff like that in there if you have time. You'll have about, I preach for about 45 minutes, and so, and then you got to subtract, 2-3 minutes for them to, gather down, and, a couple minutes for them to calm down. So you probably have realistically about 38 minutes a given time. So, which, obviously isn't a lot, but you might be able to fit a craft in there, a game in there as it goes along. And you don't have to stick to those, I would just ask you to stick to the Bible lesson, so if you do a different craft, don't do Dave and Goliath when we're in Jonah, it would be weird. So, if that makes sense. So there's going to be a lot of freedom, an extreme amount of freedom, as long as we're making sure that the kids see all of these lessons. There's a kind of a gospel picture as part of the
Christ
Bible lesson,
connection.
Christ connection. And so I just want to make sure that they always see that, all scripture points to Jesus. Does that make sense? So, cool. So, and like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It tells you what to do. They make it as pretty much as easy as possible. And again, even if you have a week where you can't get the DVD to work, there's enough in there that you guys could work around it. And you guys could kind of, and I think there would be a benefit of, if each one of you guys do it slightly different. I think that's kind of neat for the kids. There's a variety for the kids, if that makes sense. So, all right, cool. And there's a verse for each unit. So there's 12 videos at a time, and I'll order all the. I'll that's like for a quarter. So we order a quarter at a time, and I will email you. Probably my plan would be email you early the week before you teach with your lesson. So, but even if you don't prep, it'll be in there. So again, I'm not telling you not to prep, but I'm telling you if you don't prep and if you just pick it up right before, it's not the end of the world either. Does that make sense?
Is the craft supplies, are those there as well?
I do want to. So there are options in it that are like no prep. So they're like games that you can do with that. We have kind of a craft area, and that's the classroom that is up. The wall that was it's not where we did the new members class, but it's opposite. It's the same wall, but it's the opposite classroom there. We've got some craft supplies in there, and you can get whatever you. I will. In addition to that, there are some crafts and stuff like that we don't have the stuff that I'll mention in there. If you desire to do that, if you get your heart set on it, if it's reasonably affordable, not getting gold teeth for the kids, and you wanted to purchase it, the church would reimburse you for that. So, if we were a bigger church, I would say just tell me what it is and I'll order it and everything. But just because of ease, I've got to focus on other things too. You know what I mean? So, but so you have, again, if you don't do a craft ever, if you do only those, you have a lot of freedom. So my guess is most people will do the no prep crafts exclusively, and that's completely fine too, if that makes sense.
And then we also ordered Play-Doh and
Yes. Can you speak
Play-Doh.
louder? So that,
Okay. We ordered Play-Doh and Play-Doh toys so that there's, something manipulative while you're listening. And then I think someone has volunteered to get like animal crackers or something.
Correct.
So there's like a little snack.
Yep, good reminder. So great. And then subs and switches, which is already relevant, which, people can get busy, and, it's understandable. So how I want to kind of process that is Danielle will be right now just kind of a permanent sub. I sent you guys a schedule. I'm going to resend it because David will be helping with his wife on those weeks, and so that's going to slightly impact. That means that you two will be working together on most weeks rather than you and Danielle. This month might be a little different because, again, they're gone this week. So either if you wanted to serve this Sunday instead of next Sunday, that you two could serve together this week, and that would be your lesson. Or, if you're not able to, then Danielle will film, and I guess you just get this month off, if that makes sense.
But as far as I know, I'm available.
Okay, sounds good. And the reason why I say with Danielle and that is not to give partiality to my wife, but she teaches Sunday school as well, and so, I figured that, it's just be better if, so she doesn't get, anyway, so maybe it's partiality, I don't know. So I hope it's not.
Well,
So.
we've done it. We've done Sunday school and gone
Yeah.
into the junior church, or we're doing nursery and, yeah.
And we're fine, and she's fine doing that if needed, but because now we have a number, we don't have a number enough to divide it, but we have a number that we don't need her to. And we also, if you look at the schedule, on fifth Sundays, there's no fifth Sunday schedule, and honestly, that's something that I had thought about, that even if we had adequate volunteers, I just think I really want to see this as a bridge in the service. And so 4 Sundays a year, I don't think it hurts for us to have everybody in the service. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's
I wondered
fifth
why
Sunday
you
is 4
did
times
that,
a year.
because
So,
I would have done a rolling schedule. I mean,
I've done that in previous times, and I find sometimes it's hard for people to remember, and it gets confusing quickly. But if you guys prefer, if you guys strongly feel, then we can think about it. I'd have to talk with the elders on that, beyond. But I just, in general, personally, I feel like there's a benefit of having at least some element of, 4 Sundays a year. It's,
okay. I mean,
you're allowed to disagree. That's fine. Seriously, you're allowed to have a different opinion than that.
I find
So,
that is more confusing myself to
to have.
have a week off. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
But for a child, do you mean for the kids themselves to
Or-
not have it to go down?
Both.
Or both.
Both the
Okay.
teacher or the student. It's like.
Yeah.
But if you just have the second Sunday of every month throughout this year.
I see what you're
you do-
saying.
like,
Yeah.
that's
You'll
how-
know
that's how you
you're
have it
always
Correct.
scheduled.
second,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
The same people have the first, second, third, fourth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's enough volunteers
Mhm.
for
For
four
the- yeah.
Sundays, right?
Yeah.
So when we hit a fifth Sunday, we don't put somebody else in there,
We just have nothing.
we have nothing, and then the next month, the same people have the first, second, third, fourth. So I think we'd always be, is this the second?
This is
Sunday?
coming up as the Sunday.
Yeah, so well, actually,
We're
this
actually
week you'd be the
flipping.
second,
Next-
but starting next month, you'd permanently be the third. And I'm sorry that's confusing, but, we're trying to get, so basically you switch this month, and then, but permanently you can pencil that in as, you're always on the third, and you guys are always on the second. The Turkingtons are always on the first. And then, we have that, Randy's wife Melissa as on the fourth every month. And so, and then, again, you guys can trade. Obviously it won't, if somebody's out, if you're out the third Sunday one month, you trade, and that obviously in that case you wouldn't be on that, We're not expecting people to, miss vacations. And with that said, with the trades, by the way, I want to encourage you guys to just work it out amongst yourselves, and then let me know or you can just tell Michelle Breton directly, because Michelle Breton will print it out in the bulletin, and because she does that. So, but probably why don't you reach out to at least me, but if possible, both of us, if you guys worked out a switch, and if you guys everybody is out one week, and we can't figure out a sub situation. In the past, when I've been full-time in children and family ministry, I would kind of, work my magic, but I just can't do that now. And so it will just be, we just don't have it that week. It's not the end of the world. I'd rather that than burn out, somebody is like, so, and with that, I would encourage you guys, even honestly, if it becomes like, oh, you're being asked to sub, but, you can't give back your week or whatever, to just be like, it's okay, we just won't have it this week, if that makes sense. I just don't want you guys to bring yourself out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would rather not have something than not have any volunteers in a year.
So basically, like, if, say I could make it, but Jill couldn't, then Danielle would be like the sub, or the second person there. So
Yeah.
kind of
Correct.
out of the
Yep.
way.
Yep.
Yeah, so she'd fill in if needed. And so you guys could reach out to Danielle anytime. So that you have I'll note that in the schedule that, and put Danielle's number as. So she's kind of the flexibility thing. So, but anyway, so, and honestly, I think eventually we'd like to head towards, that there will be some Sundays, even when I'm not on vacation, where, some of the elders might preach. And and not the majority, but in those cases, I'm honestly, I love kids. I'm happy to teach. It's great stuff. So, but anyway, cool. So, with that, but yeah. So just kind of keep us in the loop, and don't feel like it's the end of the world if we don't have it. So, make sense? Cool. So, all right, and then one other safety thing is I mentioned the 2-adult thing. Our policy for background checks, according to our child protection policy, is that if you were here before the last child protection policy was implemented, you don't have to be background checked. That being said, I want to strongly encourage everybody, if you have not been background checked by the church yet, if you've been background checked through your work, whatever, that's kind of irrelevant for how churches do, I would strongly encourage you, even if you were here before, to get background checked. Those who, my phone thinks I'm trying to talk to it. I'm sorry, I've got a new phone. I don't know what triggered that.
I don't know either.
Anyway, but I do think that my guess is the only person here, the only 2 people here that came after the child protection policy was put in place would be you 2. So that Danielle has already done the background check, so that would mean that you would have to. So, and talk to Michael Breton. Michael Breton's running all that, and he'll just give him the information that he needs. I promise you, he's not going to use it to, steal your money or anything like that. And
He told me he shredded my information.
Yeah, so he's really safe about that.
So, I don't think I've ever had a background check done. But
Okay.
you're saying it's because I've been here at the church
You don't
longer.
have to, according to child protection policy.
Okay.
Maybe that will change in the child protection policy in the future. I'm not the only person that makes a decision and opinions on that, but I would strongly encourage you guys to just as an act of love to visitors, to be willing to.
Does it cost money?
It costs the church money, but not much. So, but yeah,
Okay.
so it's
What
not.
does it involve? Because I had to for
Oh,
the
for
school
school, you did it.
system.
Yeah.
It's not the hardcore like the school
It's
system,
not.
because I've done the school system stuff before. Like, it's literally.
They did me.
We
as
just
well.
have to give
Name,
our name and social
Your
security or something.
social security, your birth date, maybe your birthday, I don't
I think your
remember if I
birthday.
did the birthday, and I think I put my old Maryland address because that would have been relevant, because I
Yeah,
just moved.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
It's, there's no fingerprinting, there's no, the whole 9 yards, like, it's not as hardcore as like if you're being a sub. at
So we
school.
just give that
And-
information to Mike.
Yeah, Michael, and then just one personally. And I will tell you guys that, one thing, again, we trust all of you guys. But that being said, I think one of the reasons for it, a part of the reason is that you never know. I mean, never know who's who, but also another of the reasons that, a lot of lost people don't trust churches nowadays,
Right.
and don't trust Christians. And the fact that we can tell people when they're coming here and they're like, we're not going to trust our kids to you, but they're also like, my kids aren't going to sit in the service. And when we can tell people that, that we background check all our people, we make sure they follow these and that kind of thing because we care for you. I think that goes a long way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. So try to do that, as well as we also require it says and I didn't know this until I got our child protection policy last week. It says that we do reference checks, and so if you've served in children's ministry here before in the past, don't worry about that. But if you haven't, Daniel, I think that I'll have you provide some references to Michael. But
Okay, so
if you
give
have
Michael.
if you haven't served in children's ministry here in the past, then I would email me just a couple people, just 2 people that I can call that have seen you with children and can vouch, that you're not making a stew out of them or anything like that. So,
If you're on camera.
In relation to like children's ministry or just anybody?
it's just kind of a character reference. So I mean, it could be even like somebody that you watch their kids, or it can be.
ask my kids.
Do what?
Don't ask my kids.
Don't ask my kids.
I would call them myself, but it's just going to be kind of a vague. Would you trust your children with this person? As have you observed this person that having severe temper type stuff like that? Because that is one area that sometimes really, really bad tempers can be a big problem in children's ministry. But we all know. So but,
Scar them forever, right?
it can, yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, but
Okay.
we're just. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. All right, great. And those calls I'll have. It'll be like a minute. I'm on the phone with those people. It won't be anything big. So, and then I also wanted to address, and this is relevant for the future in general, but especially towards you, because I know that you'd mentioned that some of your kids might be willing to help when you're on. So for teen helpers, we have the 2 adult rule, which is obviously teens are not adults. Most churches that have a 2 adult rule our statement, again, because technically our child protection policy does not require 2 adults. We will, for Kingdom Cadets, require 2 adults. But if we have 2 teens that can help, and I'll say that they have to be at least 14. 2 at least 14-year-olds that can help would count as 1 adult. But there's still that doesn't mean 4 teens count as 2 adults, if that makes sense. So you could have in a situation where you need to but just let me know ahead of time if that's going to be the case. We welcome teens to help alongside, so long as I'm aware kind of what teens are helping. It's not kind of that, as well as so long as both volunteers that are serving are comfortable with it. So that would mean that obviously that if you guys are split on a certain teen helping, and then it would kind of be we just need to make sure that it doesn't become an obstacle, and that teen helpers, you guys will have a degree of oversight in any teen helpers to make sure that I don't want them on their phone their whole time or whatever, if that makes sense. So that I've worked with teen helpers in children's ministry, and they're great. That is more of a problem than you realize. the phone the whole time thing. So anyway, cool. But I'm thrilled to have teen helpers in any way possible. And again, so they don't have to be added to the schedule if we don't, that if it's just kind of as needed, or even your teens can help whenever they want to. Does that make sense? and we're thrilled to have them. So another thing, this is kind of more of a future thing. If I'm going too fast for you guys and you need me to slow down, let me know.
No.
Okay, cool. So, when you get done looking through that, if you can pass that down. But yeah, and you'll actually get to take, if you're teaching this Sunday, you can take that with you, by the way,
Okay.
if you want to. So, one other protection thing I'd like to push forward, and I can say probably by this summer, so it's not going to be an immediate, is that we have not really done a check-in, check-out type situation, and we've kind of relied on, I mean, it's mostly people we know and people who know kids. Even in guests, we have one guest. Obviously, the guest kid is the guest parent. But humans are fallible. And so I think it's important for us to head towards having a more formalized check-in and check-out system, but a very simple one. And one way I'd like to do that is there are children's ministry companies that make these little bracelets. And so they're like, if you've ever gone to like a water park, how they have like little bracelets. These are the cheap ones, like the paper ones. And so but these would match. So they would have so you'd have two with the exact same number, if that makes sense. And one of that number would go with the parent, and one the number would go with the child. For you guys, if somebody's in Sunday school and they already have one, you would just write down the number on the wristband that they have on a sheet that I'll email. I'll email you guys. It'll make sense when you see it. And then you would just check to make sure that the number matches. Anybody who's not there for Sunday school, we'd ask that they have to come down with you guys and get, there will be the wristbands in the classroom. I know it's an extra step that hasn't been done, but I mean, there are just so many aspects of which this protects people. Even in situations like, where you might know that, oh, this person's the dad, and so I'm going to give this person off to the dad, but you don't know that the dad, is under a separation policy, in separation order or something like that, if that makes sense. So, which actually that is a situation that we were in a church. So that's not theoretical. That actually happened one time, and the dad tried to pick up his kids, and because we had these kind of things in place, we would, in addition to that, if somebody loses a bracelet, I'll also have a list of the kids' names and who's the approved parent, and just check that, and I would ask, I've done this myself, and a lot of people don't, but when a bracelet's not there, if you have a list of the right parent for the child, or you have their name written down, check their license. I don't care if it's somebody that you know. Check an official thing to actually prove that they're the person that they say they are. I know, again, I just think we want to do everything that we can. I'm not going to police that, but I just think this is a way that we can keep kids safe. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, I know this is all new, but and I know this is we're in Poland, Maine, we're the I mean everybody knows everybody, but everybody knows everybody until they don't. It's kind of and people talk about like church safety. There's like a big movement of like you need to make sure, which I'm not against that by any stretch, having somebody like armed to be ready for if a shooter comes in. But the real issue of church safety that happens 1,000 times more than those is a child being abused through the children's ministry, and not just from the volunteers, but through somebody picking up somebody who they shouldn't. Does that make sense? Cool. I don't mean to scare you guys.
No, we've seen it in other churches we've gone to where they have a system like that, and kids have matching color with the parent and the number, tags. But one of the things we saw as well is that the kids are brought back up to the church for the final song instead of being downstairs and waiting to go back to the parent. So you bring them back up for the final, song that's sung.
Is that what was done before here?
Oh, no. The kids have always been downstairs.
No,
but
I mean,
just
it
made me
was-
think of that because
We
we
didn't
never
have
did
it.
do a closing song before.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now we do.
Now we do.
We do.
Where it's a way for everyone to come back together
Yeah.
and to end together. It's just something to think
Yeah.
about. It's not,
I'll think about that, and we can talk more about it. But the one thing I will say on that, and I know churches that have done it, but I just think it's impossible to safely check, to safely ensure the right kid goes to the right parent in those kind of cases, if that makes sense. It just inevitably becomes chaos. if that makes sense. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think it gets too difficult to try, depending on how many kids especially.
Yeah.
To try to cover because
Yeah.
as it's finishing up.
Our dog was checking out that chair. He just climbed up the chair and went down. I don't know why. So dogs are weird. So. All
You are
right.
recording.
What?
You are recording.
I know I'm recording.
It's okay.
I'm a little ADD and everybody knows that by now. So, all right. So that another thing I mentioned that the room that we're in, and I say that with parentheses because that's for now. One thing we're going to push. The elders are on board with it right now, but we're going to have to kind of talk to some of the rest of the church on, would be I'd like to, partly because of the fact that we've limited volunteers and we have such a wide age range, partly because all of our classrooms are so tiny, that I think we're going to probably head towards as maybe a summer work project, taking those the two rooms, the room that you were in on Sunday, and there's a room right next to it. I think I mentioned it in Sunday school maybe even, but there's those two rooms together. I'd like to have us kind of knock down that wall between those two rooms. There's one electric outlet on one side, which doesn't make sense to me. I would assume that'd be on both sides, but and then we can have like a kind of more informal divider. And if you do that in a way that you physically you can easily hear and easily there's not even a wall that would prevent you from seeing one another, if that makes sense. This is kind of a subdivider, and that would allow situations like we could have 3 volunteers and one of the volunteers works with the babies and 2 work with the older kids, or even if you have 2 volunteers you could kind of split it up more in a way that is safe, in a way that you can keep an eye on one another, if that makes sense. So and I think in general it would allow, or even if a kid's just tired and doesn't want to watch the videos, that's a 1-year-old, you can have them sit in a playpen or whatever. Does that make sense?
Question.
Yes.
Why don't we just put one of those like plexiglass things into the nursery? Because the nursery is already 2 classrooms. And the part that has a table, you mount the TV on. And then where the walls are, you can put like a plexiglass thing so that you can still see into the other area. But if you have like an infant, like a 1-year-old, they can be playing.
Yeah.
And so everyone's still in the eye zone, but that saves you knocking down the whole wall.
Yeah. I think we have plenty of classrooms, for the size church we are, and I do think that having it be those more traditional classes allows effectively one big class when needed. Because there's been a quest for one big class, because all of our classes, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because those nurseries it's not, it's less of, it can't become one wide open class, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Does that make sense to you guys? Anyway, but if not, maybe we look into that if the church doesn't approve this, because I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think we'll get members that would love to bring bring a big sledgehammer and have fun. So cool. So and the last thing I had before, I'm going to show you guys how the videos work. So again, people that are watching this way will have to talk to me. The lingo. So as you guys notice, that Knox is blocking. I can absolutely go. I'd like us to not use the term junior church or kids church, and the reasoning why is not me being just kind of persnickety. I think that language communicates something, and I like to communicate to families especially that this is in preparation of helping them, equipping them, kids to be in the church, if that makes sense. There is nothing like, God created the church, men created children's ministry, if that makes sense. And so that's great, it's fantastic. There's lots of good things men created, but the things that men created are beneficial to point us to what God created, if that makes sense, to prepare us to. And that's even the terminology. I know I'm kind of ripping off from an old church, but focus is very kingdom focused on, the kingdom come, and then cadets is kind of like preparation, a cadet is in preparation to kind of go spiritual warfare. And that to me, I feel like communicates that, we are this is, I know of some children's ministries that it becomes the children's program during the church. It's like, the almost communicates, that worship service is boring and irrelevant for you. But we want it instead that be excited. You know what I mean? And that's, you'll get the opportunity. You're going to graduate into it, if that makes sense. So, and then thus, it's a buffet option then. Because, for those who have younger kids that don't want their kids, and honestly, probably Jubilee will be only in there when Danielle's serving. We feel like we work towards that, and she's ready for the service personally. And for those, that's cool. It's like a buffet option. Why is it doing that?
I don't know.
It's called Bixby, so I must have said something that sounded like Bixby. I don't know.
how to silence
I
your
better
phone.
turn that off. So, so I've got a brand new phone. So, any questions?